What's up, guys? Tim Hulse with DragBoss Garage. Welcome back to the channel for a live chat. This is going to be good. I appreciate everybody that's been here. I see Bill Fioretti already left a message here that he won't be here. Thanks, Bill, for letting us know that. Rotor 22, good to see you here. I appreciate that. I want to give a big shout out to my family. Thank you, guys, Mrs. DragBoss and the Bossettes, for letting me come out here and spend some time talking with Jay about racing and about making some history. So thanks, guys, for that. And I appreciate Jay and his family allowing us to have time here. Thank you, Jay. I wanted to mention a couple things. You know, the membership that we had talked about with Darren Morgan here is going to come to fruition. And it's going to be bigger than I think you guys were even going to imagine. And it just got bigger tonight. So can't wait to unload this on you guys. We're thinking maybe somewhere around January 1st. But what we're doing is we're building a repository of information. So when you become a member, it's not there. It's just going to go, what now what? You're going to have a place to go already. You're going to have things to look at, whether it's you want to learn how to port cylinder heads, what tools you're going to need, what burrs do what. It's going to get big. And then we're going to bring on other sections from other professionals that know engines. And that's going to really, I don't know. I don't want to let too much out of the bag because it's still in the planning stages, but it's going and it's coming on strong. So I know you guys are going to be there because, like I always say, knowledge is power. And that's why I have this channel, one of the main reasons. So I want to give a shout out to the guys that were here with Darren Morgan when I had another live chat. The guys that gave money. Robert Nails gave like $20. You know, Robert McLemore gave $10. Peter Murray, $10. You know, Daniel Wilson, $20. John Salvatore, $20. Guys, I appreciate that. I donated that money right to Darren, and the money that we get on the live chat here goes right to Jay Zolko, goes right to his shop to help pay his expenses because he's building a new shop. He's got a lot of things going on, which we're going to get into. So you guys that donated, I appreciate that. I want to give you a shout out. So that's where the membership stuff comes in, and then we can do some special stuff for you. So, and the merch is on the way. So I had talked to give Evan a shout out quick. Check out his channel. I've been working with him too on some videos on the Cleveland intakes. So he's got a great channel. I can't wait to do some work with him. But without further ado, we're going to bring Jay Zolko here. Now, you guys may have heard of Jay Zolko Racing engines. And it's funny that we cross paths at this point in time, Jay, because way back in the day when you were much younger, we'll say, okay, I was racing in NMRA. That was like in early 2000. Ford Expo was going. Fun Ford Weekend was strong. I mean, Ford racing was really strong back then for the guys that did bracket racing and everything. So I remember back then, the guys that came in the tractor trailers, it was called 422 Motorsports. Those dudes would roll in and they would have like the 427 high riser stuff. I remember, I can see the cars in my head. I see their trucks. Now, excuse me. With that said, is that where you rolled in through? That's how I kind of know your association is with 422. Am I right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Lay it on us, man.
I started with them in 2005, and I guess I would have to thank my dad for that because he knew Rich Lamont, which was kind of he was the team organizer.
Okay.
He was like the head guy, and my dad was a traveling salesman. Happened to be driving through an area, saw the tractor trailer parked at a bar. Said, "What the heck was that? You know, that's a Ford truck. You know, my dad used to race dirt circle track. You know, and he had a Granada with a 427 in it. So he turned right around. You know, what's this all about?" And he pulled in there and he met everybody and he became friends with them all. And he heard in around the 2005 that they were looking for somebody to help assemble engines, and he was like, "Well, my son's interested in it. You know, my dad had a 427 Cobra kit car."
Yeah.
And I kind of helped him along with that. That's where I got introduced to engines, was right at home. And he said, "You know, my son is interested in, you know, taking it to the next step. Would you consider hiring him on?" Rich was like, "Yeah, we could make something work." So it went from there. I started like in 2005, and then halfway through the 2006 season, they put me in a car to be a driver, and that was the Dyno Don, the Dyno Don Ugly Duck station wagon clone car.
Okay.
So
yep.
I ran half the season in 06, and that was with NSCA, and then 2007 was the final season for NSCA. It folded after that, and I won the championship in 2007 for Nostalgia Superstock.
Wow.
And I continued with 422 until I believe it was 2012, 2011. And after that, they came out with their own series called the 422 All-Stars. And
Okay.
I never won a championship in that, but I finished second in points, I think like 3 years in a row. I think like the first 3 years or so that they had it. And then after 2012, Rich started to decide that he was getting older and he was going to slow down and not take on so many jobs. So he let me go at that point. And then 3 weeks later, I had a buddy that was working at Ray Barton Racing Engines in the office. And he said, hey, we could really use an engine builder here. You know, we need somebody that's going to be here full time and all this stuff. So 3 weeks after I left 422, I went down there and I talked to Ray and gave him my resume. And 15 minutes later, he gave me the job. So,
dang it, man.
Yeah.
So let's go back to 422. So those guys were all FE, right? All those cars they raced were FE. So what were they racing then? What 427s? What was it? What were they? What combos did they have?
It was mostly all 427s. And then we did
side oiler stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Some aftermarket blocks, some factory blocks, even depending on the car and the customer. Let me think what else we had. We did. We helped build the Vermeer Brothers clone car, the 62 Galaxy, and that was a 410 deal. So that was probably one of the smallest engines we did. We did some street stuff, some 390s, but most all the race stuff was usually a 428, but all the really fast stuff was 427. And
what heads are they using? What heads are they using?
Dove at the time. Dove.
They're all Dove aluminum heads then.
Yeah, that was about the best you could get. And then Blue Thunder came out with their high riser. We ran a lot of Edelbrock medium risers, but at the time, the Dove pie heads it was a high riser, but raised intake port, raised exhaust port. That was a pretty good head at the time, as long as you get the porosity and the casting.
That's what I was going to say. As long as they didn't leak, right?
Yeah, that was the struggle. And then we're working later. We moved to the Edelbrock medium riser because you could get a pretty good port in that, and they honestly seem to run similar on the track. You would think. Now the cars weren't necessarily 100% perfect setup. You know, we didn't have data loggers. Everything was nostalgia. So it was tuned by the seat of your pants kind of deal. So I'm sure there was a lot left in those cars as far as how fast they ran. Actually, I know there was. But, you know, you're trying to do a period correct thing, you know, run nostalgia. So you're not really trying to go with all the electronics like modern day. You know, you want it to look like it did in the 60s. So.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of Edelbrock medium risers, the Dove high ports, and one of the last engines I did there, we used a factory set of iron high risers that I hand ported myself.
Jesus.
So yeah. And then when Blue Thunder was making heads, we used some Blue Thunder high riser stuff, and that was pretty decent. The one guy that I used to race with on the team that ran, we had two Dyno Don clone cars. We had the station wagon, and then we had a Comet, you know, sedan. And the other driver was Ed Yeomans. He's a good friend of mine. And when he was driving that car, at the time it was owned by Dave Powers, and that had the Blue Thunder high risers on it with Hillborn injection. And I was running the wagon with the medium riser Edelbrocks, and the cars weighed probably within 50 pounds of each other.
Okay.
And even with the two vastly different top end combinations, we were always probably within a tenth of ET. I think the best I ever ran in the wagon was an 860, and that was on like mine shaft air. But typically it would be about an 868, 870 car, and he was about 878, 880. So I mean, we were within a tenth, even though the combinations for that much different. It was actually pretty cool.
I mean, just to know where I am and what my car runs. I mean, those things had to be making 850 horse.
Yeah, they were probably
840.
Yeah, probably at least that. Probably closer to 900. Just judging by. So that's another thing. We never dynoed anything. We would always put it together. We had we had a run-in stand there. Every once in a while we go over see Gus at HG, and we would dyno a customer engine, but none of the team cars that were ever on a dyno. It was all on the track tuning, which for them to run as good as they did was pretty impressive to me. Without being on a dyno to tune anything, you're just going by feel and going by the time slip kind of
old
deal.
School, baby.
Yeah.
That's what we all do,
Yep.
I don't have a dyno either. Nice, man.
Yeah, but
So
judging off
what's that?
Judging off of what my 511 cubic inch bracket motor stuff does, and having those on the dyno and seeing that they'll make 900 horsepower pretty easy, and seeing what times those run in my customers' cars, those engines when I was at 422, they were at least 875 horse, probably 900 horsepower.
900.
Yeah.
So you're telling me you do a 511 FE?
Yeah.
It makes how much?
Well, it depends whose dyno it's on, but it should make one of the better engines with the larger camshaft. I offer different camshafts based on how much maintenance somebody wants to do, how many runs they want to put on it. But with the bigger camshaft, they'll make it should make 900 horsepower on anybody's dyno you put it on. And the dyno that I used to run on, it's probably a little on the conservative side, but I mean, the track has the final say when it comes down to it.
That's it, man. Any way you look at it, 900 horsepower, that's pretty damn good out of an FE. When you look at where it came from, whatever year it was, 62 or something, whatever. Amazing, man. I want to read. Go ahead, Jay.
For an old dinosaur engine, it's amazing. I mean, the aftermarket has really stepped up on it, and for a while the big struggle was the valve train. And I remember when TD Rock Arms came out with the race rocker, not the bolt-on deal, but the one where you machine the head.
Yeah.
It has a bar that bolts on.
Yep.
The head bolts go through the bar, and then the rocker base bolts to that bar. That's the system. That made a game changer. I mean, because you can, one of the better setups at the time was the heavy duty Dove stuff with the end supports that
the end stands. Yeah,
and it had the bolt, the little, what was that, 5/16 bolt or something that bolted into the end head bolt. That was pretty decent, but the problem with that was the quality control on the rocker arms was not the best, and eventually they would fatigue and fail, and the ratios weren't all the same, and you had to go through a bunch to get them all what you wanted. But when T&D came out with the race system, I mean, that was awesome. That the wagon, when I was running that, I would if we were running a normal bracket race, I would ship that thing at 84, 8,500. And when we would go down to run at Budds Creek, Maryland in October for the Ford Fever Classic, I would have the thing turned up. Oh, I would be shifting at 9,000, and on good air, like when I would go like in the low 860s, I'd be going through at about 91, 9,200.
Wow.
And we had a G-Force transmission in it. We had 5-speed. But before we had that, we had the clutchless Jericho 4-speed. And my first time driving a clutchless, everybody's like, don't hit the clutch, because you're so used to keeping your, just flipping the clutch and pulling the next gear. And I'll never forget, first time was at Maple Grove with the clutchless trans. And I tapped the clutch going from first gear into second. Yeah, when you do that, it goes from first to fourth. And the high chip in that car was 9400, and it was up on the high chip. It blew the sliders apart in the transmission. But, you know, with that valve train, it at 9400 with an FE, it never hurt anything, never broke any springs, never ate up any bearings. So
what?
Yeah, that's a lot of RPM for an FE, you know.
It is. I love hearing this because there's a lot of FE guys on there, and they really don't have a place to. Well, let's not even go there. So let's keep going. I got a good idea.
Yeah.
But let me give some shout outs to these guys that are on here, and I'll tell you who's here. And how about this? Mike's Automotive and More. Hello. Good to see you, Mike's Automotive. George Trish. Think y'all around the membership to 15. Nah, we're going to stick to $12.99. I don't want to. We're not up to make a killing. We want to give back. And guys can't. We don't want to take too much money. Hey, guys and gals. Ken, good to see you here. THC Racing. Good, everyone. Thank you, Tim. And thank you, Jay, for giving us your time. We appreciate you being here. Sean Zimmerman, 70 Cleveland head is a good cylinder head. Yes, it is. Thank you for telling us. We appreciate that. Ken, just saw the first post on my feed. I'm at awards in Philly. I'm still going to listen in. Excellent.
Nice.
Don't worry about that. Those awards. Chris Greenwood, good to see you. We got 38 guys on here. Nice. Someone asked what awards show it was because I don't know what it was either. So here it is. Let's see. Mike's Automotive. He's balancing between watching this and his kids' awards. Laugh out loud. Okay. AB, good to see you. I'm here. Came in late. Don't worry about it. It's on replay. You can get it when you want. VRM from Sacramento, California. Good to see you. Here it is. Now you got to hear this one. This is from VRM in California. 9400 FE. Wow, no damage. Hell no.
Nope.
No way.
Yep.
Not with Jay building the engine.
Yeah, there's probably a video if you go on YouTube and search my name, there should be a video maybe posted by like AFX Comet or something of the FE Racing reunion at Beaver Springs, and this was years ago, and it's when I was match racing Dickie Estevez. He was another
Warbox.
Yeah,
Warbox, right? Yep.
Yes. Yep.
That was a camera in that thing, wasn't it?
No, it was a 460. Believe it or not, it was a 385 series with a Lenko.
Yeah, but way back at that time, way back in the day, though, wasn't it a camera?
I don't remember actually.
You guys, let us know. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's a video of me racing him, and it's maybe like a 4-minute video, but it starts with the out of car video, and then we not a GoPro because GoPros weren't around then, but we had a camcorder in the car, and if you zoom in, you can see the tack, and it's a 10,000 RPM tack, and 10,000's over here, and I'm shifting basically straight up at 9,000. So if you zoom in, you can watch the needle moving around. So it's a lot of RPM, but yeah, it was never a problem. Never ate up bearings. It was a Shelby block, so it was not
aluminum block, right?
Yeah, it was not. There wasn't anything factory in it. It had a billet crank in it. It was a Crowler crank, but it was stock 427 stroke. It was 3780, and it was a big bore Shelby block, so it was 4350 on the bore. So I think it was like 435 cubic inches or something like that. So.
Man. I love those things, man.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about FEs is the way the intakes are. You know what I mean? I like it top and off. It's easy to go, but it is what it is.
I'm not sure why they decided to do that. There's somebody probably knows why they engineered it that way. I'm sure there was a reason. Yeah.
Back in the day, man, probably cost.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it was easier to make the cylinder head or easier to make the intake. I don't know, but yeah, that's what they decided to do. So unfortunately, got to work around the push rods going through the intake, which can be a pain in the butt, but it's something you learn to deal with when you work on them. So for me, it's not really that big of a deal.
You mean like a tunnel port, you're saying?
Well, no, not where they go through the port.
Yep.
But all the FEs, the push rods go through.
Oh, yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yep, I got it.
Yep.
That's why you just move the port where you want to move it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
You know, what oiling, are they a priority oiling?
On the Shelbys, yeah. And
what about a side oiler, though? Are they?
Yeah, they still are. Yeah, because like a center oiler or a top oiler, however you want to refer to it, it kind of oils, it oils up in the front, and then it goes up to the lifter valley, and the main oil galleys in the center of the lifter valley runs the length of the block, and then it oils down around the outside of the cam bearings, and then down to the mains.
Okay.
So, and then from the cam bearings, it goes up to the lifters when you're oiling through the shaft. So the top oiler, the center oiler, is not really priority main oiling at all. The side oiler oils down the side, and then it goes directly over into the mains, and then it tees off, and it can go the cam and the main basically at the same time.
What's the what are the limitations like in FE in the oiling system? You know, RPM wise. I mean, is a stock oiling system good to 7,500?
Oh yeah. We would modify it. So like from the oil pump to oil filter, you know,
clean it all up. Yep, deburr it. I know white. Yep, I got that. Yep. And then going through the block, you know, drill everything out 7/16, and I would do the whole oil galley like on a center oiler. I would do the whole thing front to rear. Really? Yep.
Yeah. You probably don't need to do that. I can't say that because then some guys might try to do it, might have problems. But if you're running a solid lifter and if you're oiling through the push rods, that's the big thing. Running the T&D race rockers and oil through the push rods with a roller bearing lifter, then you can start restricting the oil flow to the top end. And then obviously that keeps more oil volume down to the bottom. But on the factory block, you still go through and match the bearings, you know, match the oil hole in the block to the bearings. And I would even go through and drill the oil holes in the block larger, just to get a little more volume around the cam bearing and down to the mains, you know, on the center oiler stuff. Side oiler stuff, we honestly didn't, when I was at 422, we didn't do much with the side oilers at all. Most of the blocks we used were top oilers or aftermarket, you know, like the Genesis or later on the BBM came out. So
it's amazing, man. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So you that's probably why you like FEs. You got into it. I mean, you cut your teeth on them really when you think, what do you like, 38 maybe, 39 or something?
39, yeah.
39. Jesus, man. 59. I don't want to think about it, okay? But well, that brings in, you know, that's another good point though, Jay, because you know, like I said, this membership that we're doing, I keep pushing that, but because I'm going to open that door, and it's going to open. It's going to be a floodgate, because it's guys like you that are 39, 49, 59. You got another 20 plus years to work if that's what you choose to do, or more. You know, so you're carrying the torch for the FE, which is really Barry Robotnik used to do it. Gone. That leaves Blair Patrick is the only other guy I know that really does FEs. You know, Keith Crafted back in the day. Yeah. So I don't know who else really is a big FE guy.
Yeah, Kunz used to be heavily involved.
Yep.
Tom Lucas, he's another one. I think it's FE Specialties. But yeah, they're few and far between. I mean, there's not. I mean, it's an old engine, and it's not a run-of-the-mill deal. It's definitely a niche type of deal.
Like a Cleveland. Same as a Cleveland, kind of. You got guys are dedicated to Clevelands. That's what they like. You know what I mean? And same with FE or 385 series or whatever, or a 350 Chevy or Hemi, whatever, you know, what you guys like. So just think about this. I'll ask you now, Jay. You and I could work on some videos on some FE stuff specific, you know, or you could do them, whatever. But that would be something to consider part of the membership, you know, a library where you can want to go, you want to know about FEs, Jay's going to teach about FEs and he's going to go over the oiling system on this particular whatever, or, you know, timing on this, whatever. Those are all little, it's stuff I think guys really would eat up. You know, okay.
Yeah, that'd be a cool opportunity.
You guys comment on here. I mean, right now there's 50 people on here. So comment what you think. I just asked them, you know, if you guys would be interested when we do this membership thing to have a FE guy in there. You know, that's it. I'm not an FE guy. I don't know a lot about 385, although they're similar to 335 stuff. But it would be nice to have a Hemi guy and somebody that knew FEs in there. You see how it works out?
Yeah.
So let's see what we got, what some people have to say about this. So here we go. Mid-Atlantic, yes, we got that. Half the inside, yeah, I know what I mean. Here it is. Terry Grover. Hello, Tim. Good to see you. You too. I'm glad you're here, Terry. You know, he's a guy that does his own head porting and stuff at home and intake manifolds and stuff and does his own YouTube thing and stuff. He's always on here. He likes to learn what he can learn, you know, because like I say, knowledge is power, and you never know what you're going to get. Tim, didn't you just acquire? Yes, I just acquired this place right here. I'll give you a little show. 351cleveland.net is my new website. It's been around for 20-something years. It was all Cleveland related. All the guys that were into Cleveland's all hung out there back in the day before we had real computers. You know, it was all message boards. You remember that, Jay?
Yeah.
There wasn't none of this. You type messages and wait for the guy to reply back to you.
Yep.
But 351cleveland.net. Doesn't cost anything to join there, guys. You can donate there. We're going to start moving stuff from here to there with Darren Morgan and whatever else we can set up for different things. Could have a whole Hemi section there. You know, I would love to build a Hemi, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jay Zolko, my engine guy. James Joyce. There you go, James Joyce.
Hey,
Do we know Joyce, Jay?
Yeah. He has a Comet wagon. It's called the Old Testament, and
yes,
it's got a small block Windsor in it.
Okay.
And I did the engine for him, but he's a good guy.
Old Testament. I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. It says, I think on the side it says, "We will drag you back to Jesus" or something. It's pretty cool.
Hallelujah, brother. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Tim, didn't you just acquire some blocks? Well, let's see. They're at customs right now, so I'm waiting for that to clear. But yes, I did, and that's a whole nother story. Hello, VRM. There you go. Another person saying hi. Hi, Tim. Hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving. We did. We sure did. And thank you. I hope you guys did too. I met Tom from FE Specialties out at Sacramento Raceway. I think he moved his operation to Oregon. I don't know. Do you know who he's talking about, Jay?
Yeah. That's the other FE guy that I knew. You know, Tom Lucas, FE Specialties. I'm not sure exactly where he is, but I believe that's correct.
Yeah, but there may be 5 guys that do this, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other people that I don't know of, I'm sure.
Right.
But as far as building stuff, that's like 850 horsepower and over. Probably only about a handful of guys, yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing.
I know of.
And you're not building a 600 horsepower 427. You're building 850 and up high horsepower stuff.
Yeah.
So these engines are not going to be, a bracket engine could be anywhere from 10 grand to 40, right? For an easy bracket engine. This stuff, you're to 100 for some of that stuff. It's got to be, ain't no joke.
Not for the FEs, but maybe if you wanted to start talking about like a heads up engine, then you're definitely not build a heads up small block like a comp eliminator engine. You're not probably gonna be able to touch that for 60, But but the FE stuff is depending on what you do for a block, and what you do for heads and all that stuff, and valve train. But you could probably do 900 horsepower somewhere in the 45 to 55 range, depending on if you went with
That ain't
aluminum
bad.
block. Yeah,
That's not bad though. That's
I
not
know,
bad.
and it's a ton of work, especially when you start like my port program. The port in the head is moved, so it's moved over a 1/4 inch and up a 1/4 inch. So to make the intake work, it takes time to get the intake to work, and I got to run. I have Jessel make me offset lifters, and then I have TD make me offset rockers, and that way I can get the correct size push rod in there. What I feel correct anyway. But then you got to get an intake with no push rod holes in it. Move the push rod hole, and guys like Blair Patrick or Robert Pond been doing NHRA stuff. It's nothing for them. And I started doing that stuff when I was with 422. We started moving the ports around, and guys were doing it long before then. But but that's, if you want to make power, that's what you got to do. The FE port is goofy. It's got a big turn in it, so you can only get it so straight because you can only move it so much. That was why they came out with the tunnel ports, because they moved them over so much, they were in line with the valve, but then the push rod was in the road. So that's why the push rod goes through the intake. But with the medium riser stuff, any little bit you can help straighten that port out, it makes a difference. But a lot of work goes along with that. But if you want to make more power, that's just what you have to do. It's just part of the deal.
Well, I mean, you got to pay to play. There's no doubt about it. And you see that. I mean, you think about it, that's $100,000 race operation right there. You got to have the car to go with that engine. I mean, that's big money to get involved with that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And I wonder how many guys are out there that really want to do that, Is it? Yeah. I bet the clientele is more probably my age. Once they're in their 50s to 60 and 70, that's the guys that are probably racing the high dollar stuff. Guys that are on their
majority of it is every once in a while you'll get you'll get a younger customer. But it's funny, once you get to like a certain level, it almost doesn't matter that much if you want to build an FE, a Gen 2 Hemi, a Cleveland, or a Cleaver, like a Windsor with some Cleveland heads on it. The machine work roughly is still going to cost the same. So you might have one engine that might, in the end, it might be like 5,000 more, 8,000 more, maybe, depending on what pistons you use and how much you're cutting off stuff or moving stuff around. But basically, no matter what platform you choose to build, once you get to a certain level, they're all going to be probably within $10,000 of each other. That's where everybody says, "Oh, FEs are, that stands for freaking expensive," and but it depends. If you want a blueprint and do everything right, no matter what block you buy, you're gonna be doing that. I mean, even if you go buy a small block Ford, it's $4,500, and you buy an FE, it's like $5,600. So it's a little bit more, but it's not like double or anything like that. So,
and they both need machine work, right?
Yeah. You still got to hone the cylinders. You still got to line, hone it, deck it, roller cam bearings, lifter bushings, all that stuff. You're going to do it anyways, no matter what. So.
Wow, that's awesome, man. You're probably the first guy I really talked to, Jay, about FEs, other than my buddy the Shoe, who may be on here. And if we had a little FE area, he'd be on it all the time. I mean, it's just the tech. These guys are really obsessed with that. Some of these guys are. And we talked about it. They're dying off, man. The bottom line is people are dying off. I'm 60. Yeah. These guys that know this stuff are already in their 70s and they're dying off daily.
Yeah.
So we got to keep this information around. Another guy said here. He said, Brant Kelly, Jay built me a killer FE.
Yeah. He's got like a 511 crate motor deal. Not a crate motor, but
I know it. Yeah,
bracket motor. And,
900 horsepower.
Yeah, he made. I believe he made 850 or 860 with it.
Yep.
Single carburetor. Yeah, that was. That runs pretty. He's got a station wagon as well. a lot of guys have station wagons.
Oh,
It
yeah.
runs pretty good.
Battlestar Galactic, my buddy Larry Courtcomb. He's got an FE. You know Larry?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, with a stick, man.
Yep.
We've raced all way back since 2000. 24 years we've raced on and off. Let's see. Tim, I noticed there's a lot of engines in super stock, which surprised me. FE engines in super stock. Yeah. Really, it seems like, what is it? FE and Hemi. What else is it? What's another popular engine in super stock? Is Chevy big in there?
You know, I don't really follow super stock a whole lot.
Not me either.
Yeah,
put it in the comments, guys. We'll look at it and we'll read about it. Because I don't know that either. What's this guy say? Ken says, I put a set of 427 football connecting rods in 390 build about 20 years ago. What is the limit for those in stock form with ARP wave bolts installed?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a hard question because me personally, for a performance engine, I would not use the factory rods, but that's just my opinion. I have in the past, and I probably have used them in builds that are like 550, maybe 600 horsepower. That's a guess, and maybe like 7,000 RPM. But in today's world, as easy as it is to make horsepower with like the trick flow heads or a ported set of Edelbrocks, I would definitely run an aftermarket rod, whether it's a Cali's or a Molnar or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, they're not. I mean, a probably set of rods for that is probably about $800. I bet.
Yeah, I think a set of Cali's Comstar, just like a big block Chevy. Like if you buy a stroker crank, it's going to be set up for a big block Chevy rod. They're probably like $700-800 in that range.
I mean, that's reasonable. You never have to worry about it again. You know, well, not again, but.
And I have a few sets of those in stuff in the FEs making 900 horsepower and turning 400 RPM with just a set of Comstar rods, and it's never been a problem. And then some of the higher end stuff where guys are going after a little more power, like if we try to make like 940, 950 or whatever, then I'll go to a Carrillo rod, you know, and then I work with Carrillo and send them all the specs, and they design the rod for each application. So it's not just an off the shelf, like, you go buy a 600-700 rod. So I'll tell them what crank pin I want, what I want on the width of the rod, what I want for the pin end diameter, and tell them the stroke and the length, and then the RPM and cylinder pressure, and they build the rod around that, and it's per application. So that's where you get into the extra money, if you want to go with a better, higher quality part, or something that's designed specifically for your engine.
And that's what you're getting, though. When you're building with you, you're getting someone that knows all this. That's the thing. Guys say, you got to remember, men and ladies that are out there, you get what you pay for. I would rather spend extra and know that I'm getting the best product. I don't have to worry about it than to spend it and save an extra $100, $200, $500. Yep, I saved that. Now I got to worry about that. I don't know. I want the best I can afford. That's what I try to afford.
Yeah.
Get something that's going to last. Be dependent. Yeah. You're welcome, AB. Appreciate that. Mr. Woody's Garage. Ask anyone who owns one of his engines. Jay is the best. There it is, Mr. Woody's Garage. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pat.
Pat, we appreciate that, giving Jay a shout out, because, this is the thing. He's going to hopefully he gets some business from here. We all want to network. We all want to know where the know is, who to ask, or where to find the information from. And that's what I like to do. If I can direct someone or help them in that way, that's what we're going to do. How about this one? Brant's car is a hell of a ride. Yep. Fast wagons are cool. They are.
Yeah.
Here's one for you. 1IM. Please ask him if he uses a big block Chevy connecting rod in his FE stuff.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Typically, for my bracket stuff, like the 511 deal, will be a big bore in the block, 4.375 on the bore, and the stroke will be 4.250. And Scat has a pretty decent crank. I haven't had any issues with the forged Scat crank. And then I'll use, on a lot of stuff, I'll use like a Compstar rod. And I'll use the longer rod. They make a 6-800. And, you know, a lot of guys, you buy the package stroker kit that comes with a 6-700 rod. And if you're going with a big bore, you got to get a custom piston made anyways. So I always go with a little bit longer rod. It gets a piston a little bit lighter. I like where it puts the pin in the piston. I would probably, if they offered it, I'd probably go with a rod that's even a little bit longer beyond that, just to keep getting that compression height shorter on the piston. But the 6.8 works out pretty well. And even the 6-700 works fine. But if I'm going to have to get a piston made anyways, draw one up, then I'll just might as well go with the longer rod. It's off the shelf part, and it's, you know, I like it.
How does that line up? How's a big block Chevy line up with the piston pin? Is it perfectly in line, or is it, you know what I'm talking about? The correct Ford offset they talk about.
Yeah, because the crank is ground for the offset of the Chevy rod to work in the Ford bore center. So it works out. Yeah.
And that's important for you guys to know, because those are little facts. If you don't know that and you want to piece an engine together, an FE, that's an important little fact to know right there.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Now
the other thing, a little secret share with you, on the higher end stuff where I use the Carrillo rods, those are piston guided. And that uses a narrow big end, but it doesn't touch anything. That doesn't touch the crank, doesn't touch the other rod. And the bearing in the big end bore, and the big end bore is perfectly on center with the beam of the rod. And it's in, you know, all the load is on bore center line. So on the higher end stuff, I got a couple FEs that are piston guided, which I don't know if anybody's ever done that before. So
I mean, that's cutting edge stuff, man. You know, you guys look at, there's a bunch of guys on here that know a lot of stuff. So they'll, as soon as they'll be researching, and they'll, this guy has already done it, or no one's ever talked about it. That's good stuff. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now this is interesting fact. AB says, I got to put my glasses on sometimes to read this. U-Haul trucks featured FE engines all through the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Well,
there it is.
I never knew that.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
There it is. So now you know where you can get your spare blocks.
Yeah.
Local U-Haul place.
I'm pretty sure they had 361s or something. They definitely had FEs in some school buses. I have seen that before.
Here's one for you, Jay. How do you feel about sleeving an FE? So obviously they're talking about factory blocks.
Ooh.
You know?
Yeah, I don't like that idea. But you need to sonic check it first. So the FEs are usually, factory blocks are usually pretty thin in the cylinders. So
are they really?
Yeah. Yeah, like a 427, depending on, you just got to check it, because some they have so much core shift that you almost can't even go 30 over. So to put a sleeve in it, if you got a block that's got a lot of shift in it, a lot of times it'll be through into water, and it can make a pretty big mess of things. And usually it deforms the bore next to it, so you can't just repair one hole without going in and rehoning the one next to it to get it straight and get it round again. So yeah, that's a tough one, especially if you see like a good deal on an FE block, and it's, you know, it's like, oh, it's 60 over, you know, whatever, 40 over. It's like, I don't know about that. Like anymore, I try not to run the factory blocks unless
get a BBM.
Yeah, either that or a Pond.
Pond, yep.
Yep. Or the Shelby. Shelby's are really good. But yeah, for the factory block, we used to use a lot of those when I was at 422, and they would sonic. Okay, probably. I mean, some of the stuff we'd only be like 4250 bore.
Yeah.
4280 was a big bore for us in a factory block. because the cylinders would just get thin in places. You'd measure it and it would be like 110,000 stick, and these were filled. We would fill the blocks too, just to try to pump it out. And after maybe like 4 seasons with a 4 1/4 crank, 4 1/4 stroke, like 14-to-1 compression, you just end up splitting a cylinder over time. Even with a filled block, it just couldn't seem. It just wouldn't seem to have the longevity. So anymore, for something that's a higher horsepower deal, I would definitely look at an aftermarket block.
People don't realize it. I mean, those engine blocks were made for about 650 horsepower. They weren't made to make 800 horsepower. They're right back then. I think if they made 650, they were like thinking they were on cloud 9. Okay, 700 maybe back with some of the stuff, but they weren't made to handle the horsepower you can make now.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because you look at some of the cammers, that's just a regular block, just extra oil holes drained into it, drilled into it. But the guys running nitro and stuff on it with blowers, they were probably making 1,000 horsepower more back then.
Boom! Yeah.
And it seemed like those blocks held up. I don't know a whole lot about it. Maybe they only ran them for 3 passes, and maybe they put new blocks in it. I don't know, but it's tough. It's tough to say how much the block can handle because, like the Woody's Garage, that one we just did for him. That was a 428, and it was stroked to 463, and I think it made 760 or so horsepower, and that was a factory block. But we had to go through and correct the cam bore. It was out of line. So a lot of that stuff over time, like you go to put new cam bearings in a factory block, and sometimes you can't even get the camshaft in the block. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard some of those where the bearings are pressed in and then bored at the factory.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
So I don't know if they were doing that on the FE, because sometimes you knock a set of cam bearings in and it's no problem. And other blocks, I don't know if they just move over time, but you got to go in there and hand scrape, with a bearing knife. You got to go in there and fit the bearings to the cam because the cam bores, like that. So you can only imagine what it's doing when it's running, So
now you got to correct the lifter bore now after you've done the cam, after you line that up, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah,
okay.
I haven't seen a factory block where the lifter bores are where they're supposed to be, and even a lot of the aftermarket blocks, they're not where they're supposed to be either. So that's just part of the blueprinting process. I like to run lifter bushings in everything, and I like to run roller cam bearings and everything. I hate Babbitt bearings with a passion. They work for some guys, and I've used them before, and they work for me. But for the higher end stuff, when you get into moving lifters around to the point where the lifter is interfering with the cam bore, and then you got to start notching the cam bearing. That's not a big deal, but you got to make the lobe, the journal. You got to make the journal small on the camshaft, and that becomes a problem with high spring pressure and a Babbitt bearing, because there's no surface area for that journal. The oil just can't carry the load because you're too small on the width of the journal, and it'll just wear those Babbitt bearings out. So I like to run rollers and
roller bearings.
Yeah.
Do you? What was I going to ask you? Dang it, I lost my train of thought. But well, let's go right into this then. We can talk once we get into FEs. There's 56 people here, and I can see here there's a lot of guys that want to talk about FE. So I think we should do a separate talk just on FE on another time. You know what I mean? Because I know guys want to hear that, because we haven't even talked. We've been here for like almost an hour. We haven't even talked about what happened after 422. So now we know your experience there, which we're going to save more for the end. So now you leave 422, you get hired at Ray Barton, Mr. Hemi. Now you're in Pennsylvania. Where? What city do you live in?
I live in Annville. So I'm right outside of Hershey. So maybe like 15 minutes from Hershey Park. So that's
Okay.
everybody knows where
Right.
Hershey Park is, you know. So
Been there.
and Ray is down outside of Robisonia, so he's south of me. So yeah, I worked there for him for 13 years, I believe it was, and I started in the assembly room, and then moved on to being trained on the dyno. So I was doing both the assembly and the dyno, and then later on they had another guy come in that was doing the dyno. So I was 100% in the assembly room and the honing department. So I was in charge of keeping things moving in the assembly room, and then as far as the honing department, doing training and like machine maintenance and honing all the race blocks. And then before my time was out, they had another guy that I trained in the honing department, and he would do some of the street stuff to take the load off of me, and then I was focusing on the race stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for the guys that, there's a lot of guys on here that are Ford guys, because I'm kind of a Ford guy, but like we talked about, I like everything. So I don't really care. I like it all. The Hemi is legend. Everybody, you just say the word and it's like, ooh, because one of my favorite cars is a Hemi Cuda, the 71 Hemi Cuda. It's just nothing badder than seeing that, But I didn't realize, one, how heavy those damn things are.
Yeah.
I mean, an iron-headed Hemi is like 900 pounds.
Yeah, they're pretty heavy.
940 or something like that. It's just amazing. Hence the aluminum block. So that makes a big difference. So 13 years you worked there. Yes. I mean, how many Hemis do you think you built?
I don't know.
I mean, thousands, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably, oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, it was when I first started there, I was working with there was a head engine builder, and I was working with the head engine builder when I first started, and we would probably do, between the two of us, we had to have been doing over 100 Hemis a year. There was a lot of times where we'd do three engines a week between me and him.
Yeah.
And with him being the head engine guy, he was mostly focused on the super stock program. So I was doing a lot of the like the bracket engines or the crate engines, because that was when I started. There was right at the time when the Mopar crate Hemi.
I remember that.
That was right at the end of that. I think I maybe did 3 or 4 of the Mopar crate Hemis, and then
he built those.
What's that?
Ray Barton built the crate Hemis.
Yeah,
he built them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the ones that had the hydraulic flat tappets in.
They were like 18 grand, I think. I want to remember, something like that, or 20-something thousand way back.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I only did a couple of those, maybe like 3 or so of them, and then all the other ones were just his bracket engines that he had designed, or they were the package engines. Like they had, like a 700 horse, a 750 horse, and then maybe like a 800 or more horsepower level.
It just amazed me. I just saw that Hemi, that super stock Hemi, run an 820. It's like the record now, 820.
Yeah.
I remember when they were fast, and this was back in the 90s. 850s, I think, was fast then. 854 was like the record or something back then. It's crazy how they chopped that thing down.
Yeah. Well, that's just the natural progression of the technology. You work on a certain program for a long enough time, you have time to start testing out. You get so far, you might make, say you make, just guessing, say you make 150 horsepower, say you make 1,000, you keep working it, and maybe you find 5 here, and maybe you find another 3 here, and maybe you find another 4 here, and maybe you work on the oil pump, maybe you find another 5 there. So over time, it keeps
perfected,
adding up, So you get so far, you get 90%, and then you start picking 1% here and 1% there, and maybe you work on the cylinder home, maybe you work on the ring package, maybe you work on the oil system, the cylinder head valve job, intake manifold, You know, there's so much you can do in the super stock stuff, but you're still confined by the parameters that they set for the and all that
factory
stuff.
parts, factory heads with part number or whatever, and that intake, big cross ram intake, you know, use that thing.
Well,
Huh?
You're allowed a sheet metal, but the carburetors can't be in line. They got to be, you know, offset
side
to be considered a cross ram. You know.
There it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, NHRA.
Yeah.
Rule change there. What are those things? So a Hemi, how big? 750 horse. How many cubic inch was those? How big?
When I first started there, the 526 was pretty common.
Okay.
And then later on, they started doing 540s. So all this stuff was basically like a 4.5 inch bore, and then the stroke on the crank would change. You know, I think when I started there, it might have been 4.1 something, and then the 540 was like a 4.250 crank, I believe.
So you guys build them, then you dyno test them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ship it to the customer.
What's that?
And then you ship it to the dyno it, make sure it runs the number, then you ship it to the customer.
Yeah.
And then what do? They run it, and then they send it back and refresh it every whatever the program is. Yeah.
Yep.
Man, I always saw his ads back in the day. You know, you see the Hemi valve covers and Ray Barton and all the stuff that he'd have. You know, what's he have for his own car? What's he race? Hemi, obviously.
You know, I don't know if they have a shop car right now. When I was there, they had a Copo that they were running in the factory stock showdown, and his son Dave was driving it, and I assume they still have that car, but I'm not sure.
Okay. A lot of guys are talking about sleeves on FEs, and it's kind of interesting to hear him talk about it.
Yeah.
But come to the FE race reunion at Beaver Springs Dragway in September and see a few quick 8 cars with Jay Zolko. Yep.
Yeah.
I would like to go there, man. I should go there and just do a video and have a great time.
Oh, it's awesome. It's probably it's the best all FE only race that probably the only all FE only race that I've ever been to. Even they have a show car deal, and that's all FEs only. So you can't even get in and participate in the thing unless you have an FE in your car, which is really, really cool.
I like that. I like that. Exclusive.
And they have multiple classes, so you don't have to have killer horsepower, be super fast. You know, they got a spot for everybody. You know, everybody can participate and race. But the fastest 8 cars, they pull those and they run each other, and that's the quick 8. I think last year, I think I had four cars out of the quick 8 or something like that had my engines in them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive. Good job. Nice. I like that. Well, here's how I kind of met. I got in contact with Jay. So if you guys pay attention to the channel, Mrs. DragBoss, she has that 69 Mustang that I'm building for. And I got a G-Force. I ended up hooking up with Leonard Long, who owns G-Force Transmission. So I called him up and I said, look, I want to get that training, Leonard. What do I got to do to get it? He goes, listen, don't worry about it. I'm bringing it right to you. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I'm bringing it to your house. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm all right with that. So then he calls me a little while later. He says, well, I'm at the track. If you want to come and pick it up. I'm like, I'm good. Let's go. I'm psyched. You know, he brought it from Pennsylvania all the way up. I picked it up there. And so then I saw his Mustang, and I'm like, I think it's a 95. And we're talking about it, and I seen the power plant. I'm like, Jesus, that thing's a monster, man. I go, what are the heads on it? He goes, oh, they're D3. And then it got me, you know, I did a thing with Don Macedo, and I started thinking about D3 cylinder heads, and I have that intake, and I started, you know, salivating. I need to get a set of those heads. So I said, who did this motor? And then he said, Jay Zolko. I'm like, I don't know that guy. You know, I don't know who he is. You know, he talked like I should know him. And I'm like, then I started, and then he said something about 422. And I said, yeah, I remember that group back in the day. So he said, yeah, I made a video and I got screwed up and I forgot the cubic inch, you know, and some guy called me out on it and said, and I don't remember, but it was 415 cubic inch. And it made like 1080 horsepower, he told me. And I'm like, Jesus, Leonard, this is amazing. And I said, who is this guy? He says, well, he started telling me about you a little bit. And I said, I got to talk to that guy. So he gave me your number. And then I called up Jay and I said, well, Leonard said, hey, Hook, talk to me and blah, blah, blah. And we hit it off. It's like when you start to talk to a guy and you automatically know that you got a conversation rolling and that you're already in, it's like, it's so much fun to talk. It's like I get excited right now about it because I'm pumped. I see these guys, there's 50 or 60 guys on here that kind of feel the same way, that we're bringing them stuff that they can enjoy. Yeah. So that's how I met Jay Zolko, is through Leonard Long, which I forgot to actually send him a post for this, but I'll send it to him tomorrow or something. He'll see it. He'll be on here because I want to bring it and get his story because he's got a magnificent story too. Yeah, so we were talking about engines, about building stuff, and this is the stuff that Jay kind of, but for example, cam bearings, you know, you were just talking about how you hated Babbitt bearings. You know, now I've never put a set in any engine. I've seen scratches on them. I use a little Scotch-Brite on there, clean it up, I slide that. I don't even care. I slide that thing in there and I go racing. You know, I'm just I'm not worried about it. But when you start talking about it, and I have an engine that's I don't know where it's going right now, but it's at DragBoss Aluminum Cleveland. Now that's got 55 millimeter cam bearings in it. Now Tony from BS told me Bischoff said, dude, you want roller cam bearings? And I said, why, Tony? He said, just put them in there, and once they're in there, you spin that engine over, it's going to be like you'll never go back to Babbitt again. And I said, okay, Tony, I trust you. He put them in, and when you told me this, and I said, well, what do you think about horsepower on this stuff? This is what guys like to know. Where can they pick up horsepower? Is it worth, you know, this guy, Tim Miller or James Joyce, to put roller bearings in his 390 FE or my Cleveland? Is it worth it, Jay?
If you're going to race it, yes, absolutely. I would definitely do it. It allows you to do other things to the engine too, to help make horsepower. So I had a 428 factory block center oiler once, not that long ago actually, that we did the engine, trick flow heads, ported intake, you know, pretty hot engine. It was actually for Woody's garage. And the first time we took it to the dyno, we had the Babbitt cam bearings, you know, and factory lifter bores. Just honed them so the lifters fit, thousandths, 8 8/10 clearance on the lifter. Yeah. Didn't do anything crazy, you know. And I think we made like 720 horsepower, somewhere around there with it. And then it was like, well, you want to do a test, you know? Do you want to try doing a roller cam bearing on this and lifter bushing the block? And it was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Yeah,
you know?
Okay.
You know, it's a street engine, but it's low mileage. So that was the major hesitation, you know, because personally I don't know how long a roller cam bearing would hold up in a street driven application. You still need some engine speed to get the oil thrown up on the bearings, because there's no pressure oil to them. It's just splash only. Right. So it would probably last a long time, but I've never tested it, so I can't guarantee it.
You guys comment about that.
Yeah. In a race engine, drag race engine, years. I mean, I've seen guys bring me, you know, 351 NASCAR blocks with roller cam bearings in it that were used up from, you know, like Ernie Elliott or something. And then we freshen it up and change the cam, change whatever.
Hell yeah.
And still run the same bearings from Ernie Elliott for another 10 years, you know, after they said they were junk, you know what I mean? So they last a long time in a race application. But so we did the roller cam bearings on this 428 block, and we lifter bushed it and rehoned it so it had the same oil clearance, you know. Yep. Oiled the same way with the big hole through the lifter bushing. Didn't do anything trick with moving oil holes in the lifter bushings or anything like that. Just standard oil galley. Yep. And between the roller bearing and the lifter bushings, it picked up 27 horsepower. That was it. That was the only change.
27 horsepower.
27 horsepower. Same dyno, same cam timing, same ignition timing, same lash, same carburetor, same fuel, everything. That was the only change. It was back to back as I could get it.
I mean, you can't beat hearing stuff like that, because I mean, for the expense of doing it, it's like, should I do it? Well, there's a no-brainer right there. Do it for almost 30 horsepower.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, $1 for horsepower. It was.
That's what I'm saying. That's cheap,
affordable.
and it lasts. longevity wise, durability wise, you just increase that engine right there.
Yeah.
Well, you sold me on that. So that's the next thing I'm going to start doing.
Yeah.
So that's the things that I try to give back to these guys, because some of these guys don't know. I mean, I didn't know that was the horsepower difference. Now, is it every case? Obviously not, but it's a good idea to know this is what happens. You do save with the friction reduction. So investment.
In my case with the block I was using, you might not gain as much. I'm sure, I'm positive most of it came from the lifter bushings. So the shop by Dyno
correcting them.
Yeah.
Correcting them. Yeah.
And it all depends on how far off they are. So one block you might see 15 horsepower, another block you might see 25 horsepower. So in my case combined, we saw like 27, 28 horsepower, somewhere around there. And ironically enough, the shop I dynoed at, they just did a test because that guy does some super stock stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know if he wants me to say his name or not, but they did one on a small block Chevy where they tested Babbitt bearing to roller bearing only, because it already had lifter bushings in it. So they did a bearing test, and on the small block Chevy, he found that it was about 5 to 7 horsepower just from the roller bearings. So, and not the lifter bushing. So majority of it comes from the lifter bushing. But for me, I'm kind of a perfectionist, and that can be a little bit of a fault sometimes. When I'm going to do a block, I would prefer to do the cam bore and the lifter bores at the same time. So if you just correct the lifter bores and you do it to the blueprint, if the cam's not centered in the block, if it's not in the right spot,
I can see it,
then you're still making one part of it correct, but the whole program's not right. So I like to do everything to blueprint spec.
Crank cam, and then you got to correct the lifter.
Yeah, it all starts with the align hone. So align hone is like your number one, in my opinion, most critical operation, because you have to have the align hone done first, because all the other machining on the engine block is based off of that main bore. Yeah. So you're going to machine the deck, it's going to be parallel to the crank. So if you don't do your line hone first and it's all over the place, you might do your line hone and now your deck might be not 100% perfect, or, so every time I send my block to get CNC work done, the line hone is all finished.
Okay. Important steps for guys to know, especially when you're doing it yourself. And there's not a lot of guys like you doing it. I mean, the machine wise, the machinist, we talk about all the time on this channel. Those guys are just slowly dying off, and there's not a lot of new guys replacing it. I mean, you're 39. I don't know how many guys are in their 20s that are doing this now that say, hey, I'm going to do this. One guy was from Sam, I think that's called the machinist school. Yep. He was on here and he was talking about it. So not a lot of guys just want to do that.
It's a little concerning, because anytime you open up Facebook or your email, it's machine shop liquidation, going out of business, auction here, auction there, and it's like, wow. That's like, you can find some machines sometimes, but it's like when you think about the whole picture, how many shops are closing up. So the guys that are still around are typically swamped, typically like completely backed up and busy. But, hopefully more shops open, because, the demand is there. I got a lot of work sitting around here, fortunately. But I just hope some guys can stay patient because I'm only one person. I can only do so much. So
that's the thing. It's you. It's one person. It's Jay Zolko. It's not Jay and 10 other guys working at his shop. It's you doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
And your shop's at your house, right?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
That makes it nice. So you can go in and eat with your family, kiss your kids goodnight, get back out in the shop and do what you have to do sometimes. I bet, do you work like till 1, 2 in the morning sometimes, stuff like that?
Oh yeah, that's pretty common. I mean, usually works 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and typically I would say a good 12 to 14 hours a day. So sometimes a half day on Sunday, but I try not to do that. So
I mean, that's what you have to do though, to survive when you're in this business, when you're a one-man show. You know, there's no one else to do it but you, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the farmer who can't take a day off, you know,
Right.
because you've got so much work. So it's
Yeah.
a kind of a curse, but it's what you want right now. At your age, bring it in, baby.
Yeah. Well, anytime I got the opportunity to learn something that interests me the most is just constantly learning something new, or, you know, something didn't work out, figuring out why didn't it work out, or if something did work out, okay, why does this work so well and this doesn't, and it's very similar, you know, what's going on here, what's the difference, you know? So figuring out how things work is really exciting for me.
Well, it's once you unlock that secret, dude, that's the next step to performance for the next piece of your puzzle to get that extra horsepower. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once you figure that part out, and like rings, what kind of rings do you like? What ring package?
Total
seal. What do you call it? The 0.9 stuff? What do you like?
Yeah, the 0.9 stuff is what I run on a lot of my bracket stuff if they offer it in the bore size that where I'm at, you know.
Okay.
Sometimes you gotta make a compromise, you know. Sometimes you can't get a 0.9. Sometimes you gotta run like an 043 or something. But even that ring is a good ring. For the race stuff, for the actual race stuff, and still wanting to be endurance, get some life out of it. The 027 is a good ring. Okay. And then from there, you move down maybe to like you're starting to get into like comp eliminator stuff. You know, you're under 024, and then you get into really high end stuff, and you're even smaller than that. So I don't want to say how much smaller, but I just got a box right here from my buddy.
Yeah, there it is.
Total Seal. Those were, he just made those for me special. That's for Leonard's stuff. So.
Well, let's put it this way. I've seen guys run Formula One rings with, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Thin.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's good power there.
Yeah, it is. You gotta kind of you get to kind of like a point where it seems, anyways, for me, there does seem to be a point of diminishing return. Okay. So mostly the stuff, what I do, it has to be made. It's made special for me because I'm confined to a bore, based on the small block Ford platform that we're running in Leonard stuff. You know, we're confined to a certain bore size, but we have a valve of a certain size, and it's in a certain location, which happens to be close to that ring. So the ring has to be made pretty small, so it doesn't interfere with the relief, the valve pocket in the piston. So, because that's the other thing, you want to get that top ring up on the piston as high as you can. So sometimes you can only get it so high because the valve pocket's there, and you don't want to. Your B dimension is how close the root or the top groove is to the valve pocket. So you get that too thin, you end up breaking the piston over time. So that's always a balance. You know, how much thinner can we get the ring? How much more axial or radial can we take out of it? Still maintain good seal, and that's the other thing that becomes really critical, is to get it to seal. So been playing with the surface finish on the cylinder to try to get that ring sealed a little bit better. So it all plays into it.
Whole science in that, man, with Joe and our Lake Speed Junior and his profilometer. You know what I mean? He goes to the town on that cylinder wall. I mean, it's crazy that guys, like, to me, Berry brush, good go, let's go racing. You know, hey, I did that to this, so I'm okay with it. You know, I do what I have to do to get it to go. But yeah, it's amazing, the technology with rings now. You know, and that cools the engine, the whole cooling system cools down with a smaller ring. The stuff I've been learning from him. So
well, there's less friction.
Friction,
there's less surface area in contact with everything. So
it kind of brings out really where the parts of the friction are in the engine now. They didn't know all this stuff back in the day. You know, And I learned from, when I talked with Darren Morgan, by rotating the valves, when you rotate the valves, you increase the RPM range when you rotate them in the cylinder.
Yep.
That's why a Hemi makes so much power at 11,000 RPM. But when NHRA killed the RPM level, it killed the Hemi because they can't perform down at 10,000, They need that 11, at least in pro stock. I don't know about super stock type stuff, but it's amazing the stuff I learned. And that's why I want to bring this membership, this area where we can teach all these guys the stuff that you're learning, that you like to give back. You like to teach this stuff. And I think we can do this. It's right now, we've been here for about an hour and 15 minutes. I want to welcome a few other people. We'll see if there's any other questions going on, and then we'll end up with a few things. Now, here's a machine shop that be a good guy. You may even seen him, Jay. Ed's Machine. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ed. Now, he's an old timer. Don't take that as offense, Ed. Machine shop guy. And he was just doing some old Mopar heads from the Dodge Power Wagon, Little Red Express truck. Remember that?
Yeah.
Had a 360 in it with a side pipe coming out the back. I always liked those trucks. But he was doing a valve job on it and some seat work and stuff. But it's always, he does videos and talks about what he sees. Every machinist sees something different when you look at an engine. And to be able to explain that in words is tough sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
To be able to get it across to people, especially in a live chat like this. But when you're doing it, when you're in your shop and you got a camera here and you're, whatever you're doing, machining a valve seat, with your machine, and you're talking about or showing, hey, here's where I want to cut. It's a lot easier. A picture's worth 1,000 words. So I appreciate that. Yeah, like this. DragBoss University. Right. That's exactly right. That's a good way to put it, because that's what I'm trying to do is give back. I want to allow you guys, there's always been, since we started this, Jay, average is somewhere around 50 to 80 people, depending on the topic, sometimes more or less. But there's been about 50 people here since we've talked for an hour and 20 minutes. And they all want to hear this. They love this knowledge. And I appreciate you being here. And we were talking about it earlier, and I kind of hinted to it while we're talking, men, that what I'm going to do with this membership aspect, I think Jay and I'm going to have Jay come aboard too and have a section on this where he can present what he wants to present and give topics or teach some basic things that he thinks important, FE related or Hemi, whatever, but anything really, because you're one of the top guys up there as far as build a competition engines out there,
Thank you. Yeah.
So we appreciate it here at DragBoss Garage that you take time for me, man, because I'm just a small guy. I ain't nothing. There we are. We're two small guys and a big fish, in a big pond. And that's what I like about it, is that we are able to share with each other and these guys here and this knowledge that we'll be gone and this stuff will still be going on, So guys, I want to appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And if you guys want to listen to a topic on FEs from Jay, put it in the comments, because him and I are going to talk for a couple minutes and plan out our next aspect of this, because I think it's going to be a whole different. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Are the FE guys still with us?
There are quite a few guys here. They keep talking about Beaver Creek. They want to go there. So I think it'd be a good thing to have a FE, because I put FE, forward engines, blah, 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 Hemis. I didn't put down just FEs.
Yeah.
And when you do an FE thing, we would cater to FE.com, all these specific sites, and just stick with that. We haven't even talked Cleveland's, and you build Cleveland's too.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like there's a whole genre of engines we can get to.
Yeah.
So guys,
we'll get these heads in there.
Oh, let's do it. We got it. So guys, what I'm going to do, because I might make a little video out of this, Jay, we'll do it right now. All right, guys. So you guys heard Jay Zolko and I talk. It was great talking to you, Jay. I appreciate you taking time for DragBoss Garage. I really do. And so do the guys here, because we're going to bring down some real FE knowledge for the DragBoss Garage. And you're going to show us something. There's only one set in the world. So let's see. What is it, Jay? What could it be? One set. When I first looked at that, I said, oh, that looks like a high port Windsor head, like a 240 high port trick flow head. From what I can see, just the way the ports are set up like that.
but
it's not. What is that head?
It's a billet canted valve FE head, and it was made by Dave Visner, Visner Engine Development, and
okay.
it's the only set that were ever made ever. There's another guy, Don Lestito.
Don Lestito has, yep.
He makes a billet canted valve FE head as well, but his uses the factory valve train layout. This is all symmetrical. So,
wow, guys, this is awesome. I love seeing this stuff. You know, look at that thing. Oh yeah, I can see that looks just like the modern Cleveland type port, you know, that you see like CHI would have or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, but instead of the two intakes being in the center, you know, it's just like a, you know, like a 351 or a 380.
There it is.
You know.
What size valves are those, Jay?
Oh, geez. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think they're 2.350, and they're either 2.350 or 2.380. I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's big.
I think 2.380.
Any flow numbers on those roughly?
No, I got to get them on my bench. But I assume they should do
or something.
Oh, they should do at least 500.
Nice.
Yeah.
500. We're gonna say, boys.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out and see if it's not secret. We'll have to do a video on it and bring it up.
Yeah. It should be at least that, because with a 2.350 valve, you should be able to go 500 CFM. You know. So with a 2.380, I mean, I would bet that those would probably go 515, 520, somewhere in there. Just guessing, but
yeah,
I will know for sure. You know, in the near
that's
future.
Like what, 1,500 horsepower, 18.
I don't know. I mean, you could easily, I would say,
NA.
I mean, you got to easily be able to do 1,300 NA, 1,350, maybe. Okay. I don't know. Probably more than that. That's probably a little conservative, but
that's what I'm thinking, man. 15, making 16. You guys put the guest down. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thank you, Jay, for being here with us. I'm going to sign off with these guys. Like I said, guys, when you come to DragBoss Garage, you know, you're going to learn something. That's my goal. I'm going to give it to you somehow. Knowledge is power. And you're always seeing and learning something new. Just like right here. We already saw and learned something new you're never going to see anywhere else. Right here. Thanks to Jay Zolko Racing Engines. Jay, thanks for being on DragBoss Garage, brother.
Yeah,
thumbs up, baby.
Yeah,
right
you're welcome.